well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you may find yourself. What we're going to be doing from here forward is we're going to be looking at a series of lectures that focus on specific artworks, specific artists, and movement highlights that we've covered so far from prehistory through the early Renaissance. What we want to do with this particular lecture, which I've titled Looking at Art, is I want to start you off with a primer. Just try to get your mind going, get you looking at things that maybe you've seen, that you're familiar with, that are in a more modern context, that we might be more comfortable with, and just to get you thinking about a few ways to approach artwork. Not anything too deep, but hopefully ways of looking at art that are a little bit different than what you're used to. So what I want to start you off with is a bit of a challenge. As you can see, it's pretty blatant. It's nice and orange or red or however your screen is made up. I want to get you going on a series of questions. It'll come up in an assignment and that sort of thing, but I just want you to start thinking about a few things, and they should be questions that we're used to asking, okay? What you see here on the screen is a quote that I latch onto pretty good that comes from Chuck Close, who is probably one of our modern masters, living modern masters. He started off in the photorealist movement, not the surrealist movement. And he says that, if to paraphrase this, is that art history is the way it is given to us usually is all we get is the technical jargon of things. You get the materials that were used and a little bit of the information of the artist and a little bit of the information about the piece, but you don't get the full significance of the piece. Me personally, now Chuck Close doesn't, or I haven't been able to find it to where he goes into any depth of this, but me personally, you have to look at more than just the piece. You have to take quite a few things into consideration before you can fully understand and really appreciate a work of art. And that requires something from the viewer, which we're not really used to doing. It's the difference between passive viewing and active viewing. Now, I know you can't see me here, but passive viewing is, if you've ever been to an art gallery or a museum, it's what we mostly do. You move station to station, from piece to piece, and you look at it, you kind of nod your head up and down, or you say to yourself, well, I don't like that, or, well, I like that, or, ooh, that's pretty, but then you walk on. But do you ever find yourself in front of a piece asking questions? Legit questions. Questions more than just, I wonder how that's hanging on the wall. Do you ever ask yourself questions about yourself? Do you ever ask, if you're appalled by a piece, do you ever ask yourself why? If you see a piece, do you ever ask yourself questions about the artists themselves? So if you notice on the screen here, we have two statements that I think are fairly true. We have art that's affected by your surroundings and our surroundings. Everyday life, our surroundings, and your surroundings is where you come from, the bias that you bring toward things, the opinions that you bring toward it. You may have a feeling toward abstract art. You may have a feeling toward feminist art. You may have a feeling toward representational art that is different from someone else's, but have you ever asked yourself why? And I hope that it's something beyond just saying, well, I just don't like abstract art, or I just don't like figurative work, or landscapes, or sculptures, or whichever. Because I would hope that the next question would be why. Why don't you like it? And the answer shouldn't be like the answer you would get whenever you were cleaning your room. If your mother would say, it's time to clean your room, you say, well, I don't want to. And she says, well, you need to. And you say, why? and your mom says, because I said so. I hope that your attitude toward art is not like that. When you're viewing art, it's, well, I don't like that. Well, why not? Because I don't. Hopefully there's a little bit more depth to it than that. Ask yourself just the simple questions. Where are you coming from when you look at the piece? Where is the artist coming from when you look at the piece? What was their inspiration? Their legit inspiration. Were they creating a frenzied storm of just action? Maybe like Jackson Pollock. Was there some sort of thing going on in the artist's life at that time? Was there something going on in your life at that time whenever you're looking at that piece of work? If you don't think that this happens, think about music. Are there songs that when you first heard it, you hated it, but then as you grew older, you learned to like that piece for whatever reason, or vice versa? Maybe there's songs now that when you hear it, it's just like, oh, geez, and it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. But when you were younger, it was the greatest song ever. Ask yourself questions as to why. There's a little bit of us in every piece of art, and there's a little bit of art in each of us. Give yourself a chance to actually talk to the piece, to look at the piece, to look inside yourself, to look outside of just what's hanging on the wall or sitting on the pedestal or playing through your car stereo. Think about the context that it is in now. Think of the context that it was in when it was made. Think of those little things. This can be very straightforward. It can be subtle. It can be very in your face. But do a little research. It's quite often I get students that will be like, well, I don't want to be an artist because this reason why or this reason why. Or more often I get students that are not into art, but they're in classes and they will say, well, I want to be an art major because it's easy. Because all you do is paint and draw and it's kind of like kindergarten. But really it's not. It's not that it should be hard, but there's research that goes into the pieces and there's technique and there is experimentation and there's all the things that you would find in the sciences, in the maths, in nursing, in any other field, accounting, forensics, but it's just presented in a different way. So give yourself a chance to look for those things, to see it inside the piece as you're viewing it. Now you might be sitting and thinking, well, it's just art. It shouldn't be that difficult. I should just be able to appreciate it or not, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I should be able to just say if I like it or not. And that's fine. You can do that. But you'll learn more about yourself and about the world around you and where you came from and where other people came from and history and the future if you just give yourself a chance to communicate with the work. And some of the ways that we communicate and some of the ways that artists communicate with you as a viewer, we're going to talk about now. One of them is pretty straightforward. We may not pay attention to it very much, but it's very, very popular and we do it all the time. If you don't believe me, watch any Disney movie. They reference history, they reference, they give a tip of the hat to other movies, to pop culture, to all sorts of things. There's a whole, I don't have a link to it, but I'm going to slaughter this. There are quite a few students from Caltech that work for DreamWorks, and one of the main buildings at Caltech where they studied, one of the animation studios, was like room 131 or 113 or something along those lines. And in every movie that one of those artists from Caltech work on, they work the number 131 or the number of that classroom into the movie. So in Toy Story, it's part of the license plate of the mom's car. In Brave, it's in Roman numerals above the door to one of the houses. In Finding Nemo, it's on the side of a boat. There's just all these different ways of doing it. And it's just a little subtle reference. It's a little nod to something else. Okay, so referencing is where you take an idea or an image, subject, composition, something, and you're trying to get the viewer to look at it in a different way, or you're giving a tip of the hat to something, paying homage to something that came before or that is running parallel with it. People do this in music, they do it in movies, they do it in all visual forms of art, they do it in literature, all sorts of things. Heck, we do it in everyday life. You probably have a shirt that reminds you of one of your friends, and so you wear it, and it's kind of funny whenever they see you, and it's like, oh, every time I see you in that, it reminds me of myself. Who knows? There's all these different ways of doing it. So here's a couple ways that we've seen it through art and in everyday life. Two pieces of artwork that you'll see in just about any art history book. On the left, you have Untitled by Kiki Smith. It's a metal sculpture. On the right, we've got the Venus of Willendorf, probably one of the oldest sculptures on the planet. It's about 10 inches tall. The one on the left is full size, normal human size, 5'7", 6 foot tall, somewhere around there. Kiki Smith is paying homage to the ideas and the ideals that are set forth with the Venus of Willendorf. If you don't know anything about the Venus of Willendorf, you have Earth Goddess, you have Mother Earth, you have nurturing, you have symbols of nurturing, symbols of being a mother. How do we know this? Through art history, they've gone to, in archaeology, they've gone to interpret a few things. So if you look at the Venus of Willendorf, you have a faceless female form. We can tell it's female because of enlarged breasts. You have a faceless female form, quite like Mother Earth. I can't tell you to go outside and find Mother Earth and take a picture of her and bring her to me. She's everywhere. She's anywhere. She is everyone's face. She's no one's face. So we have this faceless form. We have obvious female body parts with the enlarged breasts. If they're enlarged, if you're human, that's a good sign that they're there to provide food in the form of milk, therefore nurturing, giving forth to offspring, have the wide hips, very large through the belly area, which another word for it would be pregnant, but not pregnant as in with child, but full. Full of what? Full of life, full of the earth. One of the interpretations of the Venus of Willendorf. Okay? On the left, you have Kiki Smith's. That's her interpretation of it. But instead of just pure symbolism, we have a symbol of offering with the hand that comes out and it's open, kind of a Christ-like symbol that you would see quite often in Renaissance and medieval artwork. You have actual nature instead of natural things and ideas of nature that you would find in the Venus of Willendorf, but actual nature, flowers sprouting from her, putting forth life. You have two pieces based on the exact same ideal. Do we see this any other place? One's from 1994. That was 20 odd years ago. Other one's from 20,000 BC. It's 22,000 years ago. Do we see it any other place? Sure we do.